Just going to get these slides up. Okay, well, I mean, firstly, it's really good to see that there are so many organisations attending this call to really hear more about the programme and around the energy efficiency audits. So that's a really pleasing thing to see. So we'll just kind of run through a little bit around the process of the audit, what you can expect during the audit during the day, what you get as a result from this, and really, touching on those key benefits of undertaking an energy efficiency audit. So how does it work? I won't repeat some of the bits that Richard's just covered over there, but generally it starts with contacting us or the Emphasize team and completing that expression of interest form to outline you've got an interest in completing the audit. You'll then get referred to us, and one of our guys will be in touch to book a date and a time for your audit, and we'll start to request some of your energy data. So it's really useful to have 12 months of energy data because we'll be looking to see what the impact on energy consumption will be after the implementation of the recommendations that we identify. We'll then come and complete the energy efficiency audit. I've got a bit more detail on that in a second. We'll then undertake some consumption analysis, and we'll develop our energy efficiency recommendations, and these are bespoke to your site. So we're looking at the specifics around your buildings, your operations, your activities, your staff, your behaviour within the building to provide a series of really bespoke recommendations. We'll summarise all of this in an energy efficiency audit report. Now, we've worked with the Emphasize team to make sure that this is a relatable, understandable and clear report that gives you a very good assessment and summary of the recommendations, translates some of the more technical recommendations into sort of easy to understand outputs, but equally gives you all of the detail that you would need if you were to go through and apply for the grant application process as well. Once we've submitted that report, we'll give you a bit of time to read that, and then we'll arrange a call with you to go through the report and we'll answer any questions you might have. So that might be around some of the specific recommendations, how we've arrived at our calculations, what we think the paybacks might be. It might be some questions around the implementation process of actually, if you want to go ahead with some of these recommendations, what would be involved, how would that work in practice, and we can kind of talk that through with you. At that point, the Emphasize team will be available to discuss the grant options. So again, you can either come back to us or go straight to them, and we'll kind of work through the programme of giving you all the information you'll need about the grant options. And again, we can support you with the aspects relating to the actual technology and the recommendations as well. So over time, we'll be following up with you periodically to make sure that you've got the report, everything's clear, and also to see if you've implemented some of those recommendations. So some of those might be things that you don't necessarily need actual funding for. It could be behavioural change. It could be adjusting some of the settings at your site, some of your controls, which will still result in energy savings and carbon savings. And obviously that's a key part of this overall programme. So we'll be in touch periodically to see what you've been able to implement so that we can start to capture information for the overall programme on the energy and carbon savings that have been achieved. So what can you expect on the day? So I've tried to sort of summarise this with some of the typical questions that we get when we're booking in a site visit or we've got someone's expressed interest in arranging it. So, the key thing is that, your auditor will arrive at the pre-agreed date and time and location, and they'll undertake a visual and non-intrusive energy efficiency audit. We think it's really important to just provide that bit of reassurance that we're not going to be, adjusting things on site whilst we're there. It's a visual assessment of what's in place so we can make some sensible recommendations. So how long would the auditor be on site? Anywhere really, but 1 to 2 hours, maybe more. Really depends on the size of the site and how many sort of separate zones there are in terms of energy. So we'll kind of work with you at the point that you're booking your appointment to give you an idea of how long the auditor would likely be on site. Where will they need to go? So they need to have access to some of the key locations around the building. So things like plant room, or where you might have BMS control panels, but equally they'll need access to some representative areas of the site. So if, for example, your site has lots of offices that are quite similar in format, they won't necessarily need to go into all of those and disrupt your teams, so they can go into some representative areas and sort of extrapolate from there. What we're trying to do is try to minimise the impact on your sort of day-to-day operations whilst giving you the ultimate value for this energy efficiency audit. We quite often get asked, do we need someone available during the audit? And we always say it's really useful if there is someone there that can guide the auditor around the site. For one, some of the areas of your site might be locked or might not be accessible. might have security protocols. So it's really useful just to kind of, from an access arrangements. But equally, you'll have a really good idea of how your building works all year round. You'll have an idea of, is it too hot in the summer? Is it too cold in the winter? Are there specific controls or problems out of hours? Are lighting left on? Those sort of things. That really helps us to get a really good feel for where the issues might be with your current energy performance and consumption, so that we can target those and make some specific recommendations to help to resolve those issues. Another question that we're also facing at the moment, of course, around COVID is around safety risk assessments. So we'll complete a really thorough safety risk assessment process before the site visit is booked and arranged. We'll work with you to make sure we know what safety measures you've got on site, and so that we can work to those and advise our auditors to work to your protocols and make sure that obviously we're providing a safe and secure work environment for us and also for your teams as well. So we are still undertaking these audits at the moment. So, if you are interested in having this completed, particularly at a time where you may not have many people in your buildings as well, it's quite a good time to have an energy efficiency audit conducted. So ultimately, we're aiming to provide a professional, easy to use service that's got minimum disruption to you and your teams. So we'll work with you very closely to make sure that we've got a very bespoke format that takes account of any sort of particular needs that you might have. So what do we look at? Again, Richard touched on some of the areas that have been successful in terms of the grant applications. What we're trying to get is a really thorough baseline of all of the sources of energy within your sites to make some recommendations across a range of different sort of technology options. So this first group is aimed around the energy efficiency areas. So we'll be looking at things firstly around the building fabric, making sure that the building has got sort of good insulation, good glazing, possibly secondary glazing, to make sure that you're not unnecessarily wasting energy by having excess heat leaving the building. So we'll firstly look to make recommendations that improve those insulation measures. We'll then sort of look to measures like heating and ventilation controls, speed drives, fans and pumps, and voltage optimization to make sure that where energy is being used, it's being used efficiently and not being wasted unnecessarily. So it's amazing the type of savings you can make just by adjusting some of your settings around some of your BMS or heating and ventilation controls, just to look at the times that things are being used, to look at the degree of heating that's being used, and to optimize that overall. A really key aspect as well is behavioural change. So actually looking at the way that people interact with the building. Now, quite often people don't necessarily interact with the building in the best possible way, and that might be down to lack of guidance, lack of awareness, lack of signs, or lack of controls. So we'll work to understand how people are interacting with the building so we can make some recommendations around what might support a change in behavioural sort of aspects that will support the reduction of energy. So that could be around sort of awareness of lighting controls, heating controls, turning things on and off, or simply removing those controls from people and putting them onto a sort of building management system or to a more centralized control. So these are sort of a variety of the energy efficiency measures that we typically look at during an audit. We also look at low and zero carbon technology. So we'll be looking at renewables, whether there's an opportunity for things like solar PV to provide some or all of the electricity consumption to the site. We might be looking at PVs in combination with battery storage. So this will really depend on the demand profile of the building, where you use electricity, and what would work out as a sort of sensible arrangements with sort of various tariffs as well. We're also increasingly looking at heat pumps, so looking at how they either can be used to provide all of the heating demand or used in combination with existing sort of boiler arrangements like gas boilers. So we'll be looking at the various options that could be used there as well. So as part of this, we'll be looking at sort of how it would replace existing plant room, where you might site and supply sort of the infrastructure and technology for things like air source heat pumps, how that might interact with your existing heating system and your sort of outputs like radiators. So we'll design all of that up to sort of make some sensible recommendations around what can be undertaken around low and zero carbon technologies. So what do you get from this? So obviously you'll be given some recommendations. Ultimately, that's what we're there to do, provide recommendations for energy efficiency and low zero carbon technology. So we'll summarize all of this in a report, and we'll send this through to you within a few weeks of completing your audit. And Within that, we'll firstly start with the analysis of energy consumption. So this will give you a really good overview of how your building is using energy at the moment, where there might be potential areas of wastage, and some of those simple measures that you could use to optimize the building better to minimize energy consumption. We'll provide you with a summary action plan. What this does is put all of the recommendations side by side, so you can see where you get the sort of greatest bang for your buck. So you'll see where the greatest carbon savings are, energy savings are, sort of side by side. And for each of the recommendations, we'll provide a really detailed assessment of the actual description of what we're proposing. So for an example, for a lighting recommendation, we'll be describing what you've currently got in terms of the lighting fittings, volume, and we'll be outlining what we'd be recommending their change to. We'll outline all of the capital and operational costs associated with that change in technology, so what it would cost to actually buy all of the equipment and have that installed, and if that would result in any change in operational cost as well. With all of the recommendations, we'll be quantifying the savings, so whether that's in pounds, energy, or carbon, we'll quantify all of that. And we'll also outline any sort of project risk or complications. So if this is going to result in a period where you can't, for example, use your heating whilst the new heating system is installed, we'll highlight that type of risk. Or if we've designed this recommendation to work with another. So for example, we wouldn't make any air source heat pump recommendation in isolation. We'd typically be looking at those recommendations to improve your building fabric first, so that you're improving the thermal performance, so that you're sizing your air source heat pump appropriately. We'll also give some guidance on, if you were to take forward the recommendations, how would you do that? What would the implementation process be? What sort of timescales might be involved? What would be involved in some of the enabling works, for example, to plant rooms to facilitate new equipment? So we'll summarize all of this in the report. The key thing, really to kind of promote the benefits, and again to emphasize, Richard's point right at the start there, this is a free energy efficiency audit, so it's well worth taking up. If you've ever been thinking about some of those recommendations that you might take forward, think about improving your lighting, looking at solar PV, electric vehicles, this is a really good mechanism to start that process and give you some really good information and insight to help you make an informed decision about whether it's a sort of recommendation you'd like to take forward. So you get our independent expert advice. We're a reputable provider providing energy efficiency audits all across the UK for a wide variety of different sectors and organisation types. So it's quite likely we've done an audit on an organisation that's quite similar to you. So we can give you those really bespoke recommendations to your site, your type, your operations. Gives you the opportunity to use energy more efficiently and to explore new technology options. So it doesn't necessarily have to result in you buying something or paying for something afterwards. It can just be around the behavioural change aspects. So you kind of get those low cost, no cost measures as well. Obviously, it gives you the opportunity to reduce your operational energy costs if you take forward the energy saving measures, and ultimately saving carbon at the same time. This obviously works towards supporting the transition to a low carbon economy, which sort of aligns with the the entire program opportunities here, but also can help to contribute towards your wider sustainability and CSR goals. If you're looking at a wider sustainability program or CSR agenda, this could be the type of process that really kickstarts your sustainability and innovation outcomes. So it can give you some really good and useful information as a starting point to kick things off. So if you want to hear out more, if you want to arrange a call with one of our engineers to discuss how this audit might work for you, for your business, your site, your operations, feel free to contact me directly after this. My details are on the slide, or visit our website where we've got a specific page set up for this where you can arrange for a call back afterwards as well. Thank you, and I'll hand back to Richard.
Pete, thanks very much for that. Very comprehensive. One thing I should have said in my slides is that we are actually also building something called a carbon tracker, which will be an online tool so that you can actually enter in proposed changes or improvements to what you're doing, and they will then give a calculation as to how much CO2 you'll save. So watch out for that. It should be ready in a couple of months or so, but it's been delayed because of COVID, but yeah, we'll be there soon. I'd now like